you all and welcome to Candid, the Candid with Kieran. And this evening we have with us, tell them who you are.
Tiffany Bain.
All right, Rotarian from?
Formerly known as the Rotary Club of Eleuthera, affectionately known as the Great People's Republic of Eleuthera.
There you go, from the Rotary Club of Eleuthera. Wow, thank you so much for taking this time to be here with us on Candid. I'm sure you have, I just want to take this time before I get in problems. I do expect and intend to go to Eleuthera sometime soon. So I want to big up all of the Rotary Club of Eleutherans that are here. Well, sorry, the great Republic of Eleuthera. Make sure I get that
People's
right.
Republic.
People's Republic of Eleuthera. Thank you very much, Tiffany. So just wanted to get right into it. In this month, we know that it is in Rotary Theme Months, we are celebrating maternal and child health. There you go. Big the People's Republic. There you go. So I just wanted to know, I know that our topic today is the 100 days before and after, right? So I just want to firstly, before we get deep into that, could you just, tell us a little about yourself? And I just want to put it to a person. I so appreciate Tiffany because she is actually in the airport getting ready to transit. So I just want you to know I really appreciate this. But just let us know just a little bit of who Tiffany is.
So I'm a 17-year educator, and I have been working in equity-based education for the last 12 years. And equity-based talks more about improving access to education. We know that everybody, the Bahamas has universal education, but it doesn't mean that everybody has access to quality education. So being able to pool and redistribute resources to be able to kind of like equalize what that means. Working in the space of education, I have expanded to the full context of the child, which extends to community and family and the entire gamut of it. So my background is I started in international studies, which is where I thought I was going to be until there was a recession after I graduated, and I ended up teaching instead of in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs like I wanted to. So I started working in schools, and I went from school to school, and I learned a little bit more about pedagogical practices, which is like educational practices that I'd never experienced in my life. I went to a small school, I went to a government primary school, and I learned working at different schools about like different ways that kids learn that I'd never been exposed to. Working at incredibly elite schools, I kind of made it my mission to take some of those practices and methodologies and take them to a lower socioeconomic group. So that's kind of been my agenda since. I have like I mentioned, a bachelor's in international studies, postgraduate certificate in education with a focus on curriculum and pedagogy, and a master's in child, youth, and family studies with a specialization in youth development. And I've been working in schools and in nonprofit spaces to be able to bring equity-based education across the Bahamas.
Wow, that was a lot of information. That was a class just in itself. All right, that was a class in itself. And I want to say congratulations. Congratulations for all of what you've accomplished and that you continue to accomplish. So I know that you stated that you were going to talk to us on the 100 days before and 100 days after, right? Could you elaborate on that for us a bit?
So I don't think we think about maternal health as importantly and intricately as we should. So maternal health is essentially the center of a population's health and wellness. What happens with a mother and what happens with a child kind of centers us in like what it is that our nation is able to do, how healthy that family is. So the policies that are surrounding a mother and family, did I freeze?
Your image may have freeze, but the information is still coming through.
Okay, so yeah, so the way that the first 100 days before and after birth is focused on like mental, physical health, educational health, as far as, so the policies that shape those things essentially shape a nation.
And you speak about policies. which policies, just to educate, well, myself also and our audience, which policies?
Okay, so when we talk about policies, policy is essentially a term for like what the government does or what the public essentially does. The nonprofit version of that is a program where it's what the organization chooses to do. Policies are rooted in very specific outcomes, right? So we want a particular thing, and so there should be a policy essentially designed in order to achieve that. The most broad of that is we want an educated population. And so we have a public policy that gives access to universal education. We also have like the University of the Bahamas has what they kind of like a promise program. If you get X number of grades, you have free eligible access to University of the Bahamas and BTBI. That's the policy that governs the way we want our country educated. The same kind of applies for maternal health. So we have several policies, but we are definitely a country that needs to either grow and improve upon the policies that impact maternal health.
All right. So
does that make sense?
No, it makes plenty sense. And now I really want to dig, before we go into the 100 days after, I want to dig kind of into that a little bit more, because you spoke about educational. And I know one thing that, especially on a global scale, that we notice that is not being highlighted as much as especially mental health. So would you be able to say, where we are as a country when it comes to mental health, and where do you think we need to be?
So that's an incredibly good one, right? So from a physical and medical health perspective, we have clinics that provide free access to prenatal care. Antenatal care. Boom. It's all covered. But we don't have any of those resources that are targeted toward mental health. We know that pregnancy is a very stressful time for women and families, yet we don't have a policy of resources that support a period of time where we've identified that people and families are at risk. We want that outcome, but yet there isn't a policy that directly supports what that looks like. So what does that look like? How do I identify the various risks that a mother or her family is experiencing? And again, these are all very interrelated. So some of those risks may be planning for essentially her family's future, looking ahead. So a lot of companies that do have maternity leave, it's limited to, legally, it's 13 weeks. Some companies only pay up to 6 weeks. The government, the NIB stipend is 33% of your insured wage, right? So the essential stress of knowing that as a person who has brought a new member of their family, unless you work at a company that will essentially compensate you both during your maternity leave, you are now restricted to about 66% of your family's income at a time when you have brought a new member of your family. So that policy doesn't necessarily like abate any of the stress. It almost adds to it. And it's one of those things where you think about the levels of privilege associated with that, because there are some of us that work for organizations that would give you your full pay. During those times, you collect your NIB checks, you just take it back to the company, boom. It's like nothing ever happened. But so many Bahamians don't work for those organizations. So many women don't work for those organizations. And then when we think about women who are unemployed or are employed exclusively in the home, they don't get to reap those benefits from their spouses or their partner's side of that. So when we think about the policy and we think about the best possible outcome for a mother during that time, we have to ask, do we actually have the policies that facilitate good maternal mental health? You're still muted.
Yeah, and just so persons know, if you have any questions, please, you could either raise your hand or you could just pop on in and ask the question, because we want to make sure be able to get the knowledge. We know that we have an expert panelist at this time. So just as you stated, all right, so now that is mental, because believe it or not, I did not even think about NIB. I did not even put that there, especially understanding the stress, everything that is, I guess, attributed to having someone speaking. Oh, okay, attributed to having having a child. Sorry, one sec. All right. You can hear me, right? Just want to be sure. Okay. So, right. So when it comes to attributed to having a child and that the like, and especially how it's all interrelated. So let's go into, okay, now that is the first 100 days, right? So we call that, just to be sure, we call that prenatal.
Antenatal, prenatal.
Antenatal.
There's
Okay.
like a British version versus an American version, but yeah, they mean the same thing.
All right, awesome. So now let's go into the 100 days. Let's go into the 100 days after.
Again, all very interconnected. So we do have, and the thing is, the Bahamas is a relatively progressive country in providing, as we are positioned as a Caribbean nation, as we are positioned as a developing country, the Bahamas is relatively progressive in this space. We do have modernized resources that some of our counterparts do not have. So I want to first and foremost recognize, but the thing is, like, there are things that we could be doing more. We have, so looking at the physical health this time, there is weight gain, and just looking at, again, going back to the concept of stress, we've identified that like women of color, Black women gain weight based on things like stress. And so the postpartum part of it, what is it that we are doing as a country to be able to shape the physical health of mothers during and after this time? We know we have access to things like, again, we have checkups, we have screenings, we have immunizations, but like, what about, like in the United States, they have a WIC program. So there are discounted foods for women and children. What about programs that serve mothers in that very specific space? And again, not just relative to people with levels, because we all know that navigating the social services system is a chore in and of itself. But if we had programs that were targeted toward creating healthy physical bodies for mothers that shape the future, again, of the nation and of their children, how impactful could that potentially be?
Wow, that is quite deep, really, when you start to really think about it, as you state, how it interrelates to before and after, and when it comes to what government can do. Now, we know how our thoughts of when it comes to government, right? We always think, in most cases, the culture is that, you know, they only deal with what they want to deal with at that time, and they push everything else to the side. So what is it that you think that, being that, especially knowing that we are Rotarians, what is it that you think that we can do to help, to improve, I guess, this standard of living when it comes to this time in a mother's life?
Oh, that's an amazing question. So I think it's either I think it's a Finnish country. They do these amazing boxes that they send moms home with. So it's essentially a whole bunch of supplies that come into a box. The box in and of itself becomes a newborn kind of like cradle that a mom can use, and it has a multitude of resources that kind of shape what it is that we want to see for a mom. So in a rotary space, that box in and of itself can look like, what books do we want moms to read? What books do we want moms to read to their children? What core resources do moms need getting through those days? In our communities, being able to navigate grocery store coupons, grocery store discounts, so that parents and moms can have access to the resources that are most ideal for this level of support. There are, and also being able to bridge the gap between socioeconomic status groups. So being able to facilitate and work with other organizations to bring things like mommy and me play dates, being able to give Montessori style experiences to students, to kids who do not have these experiences because it's not a part of their culture in and of itself. It's not necessarily, it's a part of Bahamian culture, but not in a formalized way. It's kind of like a part of our like long-standing culture. But the further we get into middle classhood, it's the further we actually move away from things that are inherent to our Bahamian culture of coming together and having conversations and having our kids play together. And then when you get higher up in that socioeconomic status, then you re-realize the concept of a play date, which is essentially having your children be together, because like we've already been doing that, or telling stories and singing songs, you regain appreciation for that. So in our Rotary space, being able to facilitate these kinds of opportunities, but also giving access to these types of resources.
Wow. And that is such a great idea that you came up with, especially with the box. That is it's innovative. I'm sure, like you stated, it's been done before, but not probably on the scale in which we need to do it. And what I'll do, I'll definitely make sure that our community service chair connects with your community service chair, because that seems like a joint project that we need to really get a part of, especially, to improve that standard of living. As we get ready, because I know you're getting ready to go, is there anything, any thought that you would like to leave us with? Something that you want to, for us to be conscious about as we continue to go forward and, try to do as best as we possibly could to improve?
I want to draw, because again, I bring attention to our kind of like cultural socialization. So again, the more financially sound we become, the more we move away from our culture. And there are things about our culture that benefit us. So thinking about the concept of the nuclear family, it is touted as being ideal as the place to raise a family. I want us to think about the village concept. The work that we do with and for each other, particularly in raising children, isn't a space of charity, but we are a village. Like, we all look after each other. And that is the ideal condition under which we want to be raising our kids. And so we want parents to understand, like, you should have people surrounding you. You should be able to reach out to people for resources and support, because raising children is very, very difficult. And there's absolutely no shame associated with needing that level of support, because it's actually what it is that we've done for centuries.
And I know I asked you to leave that as a last point, but you just stated something that I need you to now just speak on just a little bit. And you talked about being able to ask for resources. One thing that we've seen, or not even seen, that we've experienced, I'm sure everyone has experienced it at some level or at some point. When it comes to persons, persons need that help, but they just don't want to ask for it. And in some cases, even if you want to just be there, like to be a village and just provide that support, they don't want to accept it. And a lot of it is due to pride based upon our culture. What would your thoughts be on that?
Well, we want to make the resources accessible to people. So that's step number one. But the number of times that we do it, the frequency with which we do this, we can break down the mentality of what support actually looks like. We get back to the village concept, and so that people know that when they reach out to others, it is not out of a place that is just, you're not being needy, you're not seeking charity. We are an interconnected community. We need other people. Humans are social creatures. And so there's absolutely no shame associated with receiving support. I know I moved next door to my mother when I had kids because I absolutely needed my village. And nobody should be raising kids in isolation, even as a person who might not have a partner, as a single parent home. There's no such thing. You should have a village to be able to support you, just out of general wellness, and to be able to redistribute things like stress. You should be able to do that. And that's just human wellness.
Wow, thank you so much. I promise you have just dropped on us a ton of not only information but good ideas, and even we just found a partnership in there for something so notable and something that is really needed. I just want to say thank you so much. Before I go, let me hear the noise. Let me hear the Rotary Club of Lutherans. You could unmute and let me hear your noise. Let me hear you.
We are here. Way to go, Tiffany.
The big Republic of Elutra.
Great People's Republic.
Great People's Republic of Elutra. See, it'll take some time for me to learn that. But I want to say again, thank you. Thank you very much, Rotarian Tiffany. I do appreciate you and your time for spending this time here with us at Candid. We really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. And as you continue to travel, safe travels.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.